Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. We're always trying to find ways to learn better and more effectively, and today we're tackling a topic that's, well, it's pretty much everywhere in learning. Visual displays.
Visual displays.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all those images and diagrams and charts in textbooks and online courses, those
Right. Yeah,
things.
those. I was just looking at one the other day.
Yeah, I mean, they're supposed to make things clearer, but sometimes they really don't, do they?
Uh-huh. No, not always.
So that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. We've got this awesome research article to guide us. It's a review article, actually, by Alexander Rinkel and Katharina Scheider.
Oh, I know them, yeah.
Yeah, it was published in Educational Psychology Review back in 2017. It's called Studying Visual Displays: How to Instructionally Support Learning. It's a really comprehensive piece. Like, they went through a ton of research on this topic.
Oh, wow, that's
And
kind
they
of,
kind of boiled it down to, what are the key things that actually matter?
yeah.
And why this is relevant to you is because, like I said, visuals are everywhere, right?
Mm.
But just because there's a picture or a diagram doesn't mean it's actually helping you understand.
That's true.
In fact, sometimes it can even be distracting.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely experienced that.
So our mission today is to pull out, the most important nuggets from this research. What are the main roadblocks we hit when we're trying to learn from visuals?
Yeah, where the challenge is.
And then, more importantly, what can we actually do about it? What are some strategies, tips, techniques, anything to help us really make the most of visuals for learning?
Right. Because there must be ways to make them more effective. Right.
Exactly. And Rankel and Scheider, they had these three main goals in their article, which I think make a really good structure for us to follow.
Okay.
So first, they're like, okay, what are the main difficulties that learners actually have, with visual displays? Second, what are some things, procedures, techniques that are actually backed by research, that can help?
Oh, okay.
These are both kind of from the material side of things, like how the stuff is designed, and then also from the learner's side of things, like how you approach it.
Oh, that's smart, yeah. To look at it from both sides.
Yeah, exactly.
Good fun.
And then their third goal, they're like, okay, what are some really cool questions that, still need to be answered, for future research and stuff?
Ah, yeah. The ongoing mysteries.
Exactly. So let's just dive right into it. Why don't we start with those difficulties, those challenges that learners often face with visuals?
Okay, yeah, let's start there.
Okay, so the first one they talk about is what they call learner biases. And this is kind of fascinating. It turns out that even if you have a perfectly good visual right there in front of you on the page or on the screen,
Right.
a lot of people just naturally gravitate towards the text.
Oh, yeah, I've noticed that.
They just want to read the words. And there are eye tracking studies that have actually shown this. People spend way more time looking at the words, and sometimes they barely even glance at the visual.
Huh. That's interesting. I wonder why that is.
Well, Rinkel and Scheider, they suggest a couple of reasons. One is that maybe subconsciously we just think of text as more serious.
Oh,
That's where the real information is. And the visual is maybe seen as secondary,
Mhm.
maybe just there for decoration.
Oh, okay. Or like a fun little extra, yeah.
Right, exactly. Or it's there to entertain, but not necessarily to teach.
Right.
And, we're so used to traditional learning environments
Yeah.
where it's all about the textbook, the lecture notes.
Right.
So maybe we're just conditioned to think that way.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
There was even a study by Schwanka, Berthold, and Rankel in 2009
Yeah?
where they looked at how learners were using tree diagrams.
Treatigrams.
Yeah, those diagrams that kind of branch out?
Oh, yeah, like a flowchart kind of thing.
Exactly. And they were specifically designed to help learners understand these probability problems.
Right.
But the learners just didn't really pay that much attention to them. They focused way more on the text of the problems and then the equations that came after.
Oh, so they were skipping over the helpful part.
Exactly. And there was this one example in a paper by Berthold and colleagues in 2009 where they actually showed the setup. You have the text of the problem, then you have the tree diagram, and then you have the equation. And they were showing how, learners were just jumping over that middle part.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the problem with that is sometimes that visual is actually the best way to understand something.
Oh, right, because it can show the relationships in a way that text can't always do.
Exactly. Exactly. And by ignoring it, you might be missing out on a deeper understanding.
Hmm.
So that's one bias. Then there's this other really interesting one they talk about called the multimedia heuristic.
The multimedia what?
Heuristic. It's basically this idea that when we learn with both text and pictures, we kind of get overconfident.
Overconfident.
Yeah, like we think we understand more than we actually do, especially compared to if we were just learning from text alone.
Oh, interesting. So it's like the pictures make us feel like we've got it.
Exactly. Exactly. But the problem is this feeling of like, oh, yeah, I get it. It doesn't always translate into actual better learning.
Oh, so you might feel like you've learned it, but when it comes to actually applying it or remembering it, you might not be able to.
Exactly. Like there have been studies by Sarah and Dunlosky, Ackerman and Leiser, Yeager and Wiley. They've all kind of shown this that, you can have this feeling of greater understanding, but it doesn't always mean you actually learned more.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the visuals give us this false sense of security.
Right, right. Because they're often more engaging, right? Like
Yeah.
it's more fun to look at a picture than to read a block of text.
Exactly. Exactly. And we might mistake that engagement for actual understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then this can lead to, well, some bad study habits, basically. Like we might not study as much later because we're like, oh, yeah, I got that. That was easy. It had pictures.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that. Like thinking I knew something because the visuals made it seem simple, but then when I tried to explain it to someone else, I realized I didn't actually understand it that well.
Exactly. And there was a study by Sun and Metcalf back in 2000. They actually found that, this overconfidence can lead to not spending enough time studying.
Interesting.
And it's not just static visuals either. Like research by Lewalter in 2003 and then Kuhl and others in 2011, they found that this overconfidence thing, it can be even stronger with dynamic visuals.
Dynamic visuals.
What?
Animations?
Yeah, animations, videos, things like that. And again, even though the actual learning might not be any better.
Huh. So just because it's moving and flashy doesn't mean it's actually helping you learn more.
Yeah, exactly. The movement can be engaging, but it's not a guarantee of understanding.
Right.
So that's a key takeaway right there. Don't mistake engagement for actual deep understanding.
Got it. So we tend to favor text over visuals,
Hmm.
and then when there are visuals, we might get overconfident and think we understand more than we do. What's next?
Okay, so the next big thing they talk about is the role of your existing knowledge and skills, like what you already know.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that visuals, they're not like some magic solution that makes learning easy for everyone.
Right, right.
What you already know going into it actually matters a lot.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like if you're trying to understand a diagram of like a car engine, but you've never seen a car engine before, it's probably not going to be that helpful.
Exactly, exactly. It's like trying to read a map in a foreign language. If you don't know what the symbols mean, it's just going to be a bunch of lines and squiggles.
Hmm.
And Wrinkle and Scheider, they point to this study by Reed and Beveridge from way back in 1986.
Okay.
They were looking at kids learning from a science lesson that had pictures along with the text.
Okay.
And what they found was that kids who had like lower prior knowledge in science, they actually learned less when there were pictures.
Oh, wow. That's kind of counterintuitive.
It is, right? Like you would think pictures would always help, but in this case, it actually hurt.
So it's like the pictures were a distraction for those kids.
It seems like it, yeah. Like they were focused on the pictures, but couldn't really connect them to the text or the concepts.
Oh, that makes sense.
Whereas the kids who already had a good understanding of the science, they actually benefited from the pictures.
So it really depends on what you bring to the table.
Exactly, exactly. And this leads to this really important concept called representational competence.
Representational competence.
Yeah, and it's basically like your ability to work with external representations of information.
Okay, so that's things like diagrams, maps, charts, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, can you create those yourself? Can you understand them? Can you, like, transform them from one type to another?
Oh, interesting. So like if I see a graph, can I turn that into a table or vice versa?
Exactly, exactly. Or can you connect different representations together?
Right. So seeing how a map relates to a written description or how a diagram connects to a formula.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And Cosma and Russell, they kind of introduced this idea back in 1997.
Okay.
And it's not just about like seeing a picture or a diagram. It's about knowing how to interpret the stuff in it.
Right, because a visual can have all sorts of symbols and conventions that you need to know how to decode.
Exactly, exactly. And different fields have their own like visual language,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, think about those chemical structures in chemistry.
Right, or those anatomical diagrams in biology.
Yeah, if you don't know what those symbols and lines mean, it's just going to look like a jumbled mess.
Exactly. And if you're lacking this representational competence, it can lead to some, well, some not so good learning strategies.
Right, because you might not even be able to choose the right representation for the task at hand.
Exactly. Like you might pick a visual just because it looks cool or interesting, but
Yeah.
it might not actually be the most helpful one.
Oh, yeah. Like picking the flashiest graph, even though a simple table
Uh-huh.
would actually show the data more clearly.
Exactly. And there's a study by Steve and colleagues in 2011. They talk about this in the context of chemistry learning. And then a more recent study by Nitz and others in 2014, they actually showed a link between how well students could interpret these visual representations in biology and their overall like representational competence and their understanding of the biology content itself.
But it's all connected.
It really is, yeah. And it's not just subject-specific knowledge either.
Oh, what else?
Spatial skills, like being able to mentally manipulate objects or understand spatial relationships, that matters too.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like being able to visualize how things fit together.
Exactly. And Huffler in 2010 did a really good review of this, showing how important spatial skills are for learning from visuals across a whole bunch of subjects.
Interesting. So even if you know the content, if you struggle with spatial thinking, you might still have trouble with visuals.
Yeah, exactly. It can make it harder to like make sense of diagrams, maps, things like that.
Okay, so we've got these learner biases, the importance of prior knowledge, and the role of spatial skills. What's the next hurdle for learners?
The next one is all about attention, like how our attention is actually distributed within the visual itself.
Attention.
Yeah, because it turns out that not all parts of a visual are equally important for learning.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sometimes our attention can be drawn to stuff that's actually irrelevant or even distracting.
Oh, like those little sidebars or callouts in a textbook that have nothing to do with the main point.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe there's a really colorful image in the corner, but it's not actually important.
Right. Or a really detailed illustration that has a lot of unnecessary detail.
Exactly, exactly. And this can be especially problematic for like novices, for people who are new to the topic.
Makes sense. They haven't developed that ability to filter out the noise yet.
Exactly, exactly. And there have been studies by Canham and Hegarty and others, Lowe's. They've all kind of shown this effect that you can get distracted by those what they call like perceptually salient elements.
Oh, interesting term.
Yeah, and they're salient because they're visually prominent.
Right. They stand out.
Exactly. But they don't actually contribute to the learning goals.
So you end up focusing on the wrong things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the complexity of the visual itself, like how much stuff is going on in it, that matters too.
Yeah, for sure. A super detailed diagram can be overwhelming.
Exactly. And Renkel and Scheider, they talk about two main sources of complexity.
Okay.
One is the level of detail or like realism, like how realistic is the visual.
Okay.
So for example, a highly realistic visual, it might have a ton of information in it, but a lot of it might be irrelevant to what you're actually trying to learn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like you need to be able to sift through all the detail and pick out the important stuff.
Exactly, exactly. And that takes expertise. That's something that like you build over time.
Right.
And then the other source of complexity is whether the visual is static or dynamic.
Oh, okay. So is it a still image or is it moving?
Exactly. So things like animations and videos, those are dynamic.
Right, right.
And while they can be really good for showing processes, things that unfold over time,
Mm-hmm.
they also have their own attention challenges.
Oh, how so?
Well, because your eye might be drawn to the movement,
Right.
but the movement might not actually be the important part.
Oh, okay. So you can get distracted by the motion itself.
Exactly, exactly.
Right.
And sometimes important details might only be there for a really short time.
Oh, so you have to be really quick to catch them.
Exactly. And so it's more demanding on your attention.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And then this whole idea of like the transience of dynamic visuals.
Transience.
Yeah, like the fact that they're constantly changing.
Right.
That means you have to be really strategic about where you're looking and when.
Oh, okay. So you have to be more actively engaged in watching them.
Exactly.
Interesting. So visuals can be tricky because they can be too complex or too dynamic, and our attention can be drawn to the wrong things. What's the last major challenge they talk about?
So the last one is all about integration, like how we mentally integrate the visual with other stuff.
Other stuff. Like what?
Like text explanations, equations, other representations of the information.
Oh, right, because visuals are rarely just presented on their own. They're usually part of a larger learning experience.
Exactly, exactly. And this is a really important point, like for your actual learning, because to really understand the material, you need to be able to connect the dots.
Yeah, make those connections between the different pieces of information.
Exactly. And Renkel and Scheider, they actually talk about coherence formation and integration.
Okay, so coherence formation is like putting the pieces together.
Yeah, like making a coherent mental model of what you're learning.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they draw on like work from Seufert and Mayer. And it's not just about like looking at the picture and reading the words separately.
Right. It's about seeing how they fit together, how they relate to each other.
Exactly. So first, like at a local level, you have to understand how the different elements within each representation relate to each other.
Okay, so within the picture itself or within the text itself.
Exactly. So for example, if you're looking at a diagram of a plant cell,
Right.
you need to understand like how the nucleus, the chloroplasts, the cell wall, how they all kind of fit together.
Right. How they function as a unit.
Exactly. So that's like forming local coherence within the visual.
Okay.
And then you have global coherence, which is like, okay, how do those elements and their relationships connect to the information that's presented in the other format?
So that's the integration across the different representations.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So like if you have the diagram of the plant cell,
Right.
and then you have some text that's talking about photosynthesis,
Okay.
how do those two things connect?
Right, because the text might be explaining what's happening in the diagram.
Exactly. Exactly. And students, they often struggle with this, especially if they're new to the topic.
Yeah, it can be tricky to see those connections, especially if you don't already have some background knowledge.
Exactly. There's research by Ainsworth and colleagues, Bodemer and his team, Mason and others, Schwanka and others. They all kind of point to this, that making these connections, it's tough.
Right, and without that effort to integrate the information, the visual and the text just stay as separate pieces in your mind.
Exactly, exactly. They don't really come together to give you that like deeper understanding.
So that's a big challenge. But thankfully, the article doesn't stop there. They also talk about solutions, right?
They do, they do. And that's what we're going to get into now. So how can we actually overcome these challenges? And it kind of comes down to two main areas. One is material design.
Material
So that's like, how can the stuff itself be designed to be more effective?
Okay, so like the textbooks, the online courses, the visuals themselves.
Exactly, exactly. And then the other area is learner-centered interventions.
So what we can do as learners to improve our learning from visuals.
Exactly. So let's start with material design. One of the first things they talk about is managing complexity.
Managing complexity, yeah.
Because as we talked about, visuals can get really complicated really fast.
Right. Too much detail, too much movement.
Exactly. So one approach is to use what they call abstract visuals.
Abstract visuals.
Yeah, so instead of using like super realistic images or diagrams,
Right.
which can be really cluttered with, irrelevant stuff, abstract visuals just focus on the essential element.
Okay, so they're simpler, more streamlined.
Exactly, exactly. So you might use like simplified drawings or schematic diagrams or other kinds of like non-literal representations.
Oh, interesting. So it's not about showing exactly what something looks like, but more about representing the key ideas or concepts.
Exactly, exactly. And Scheider and colleagues in 2009, they did a bunch of research on this.
Okay.
And they found that these abstract visuals can actually be really helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and one reason is because they make it easier for your brain to focus.
Right, less distractions.
Exactly. And they can also encourage like deeper processing.
Deeper processing.
Yeah, like you might have to think more about what the visual is representing.
Oh, okay.
You have to make those connections yourself. And this can actually lead to better learning.
Interesting. So sometimes less is more when it comes to visuals.
Yeah, sometimes. And there's research by like Deloche, Goldstone and Son, Schwartz. They've all kind of looked at this, like how abstract visuals can promote things like symbolic interpretation, logical reasoning.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about simplifying the image, it's about prompting a different kind of thinking.
Exactly, exactly. And interestingly, abstract visuals seem to be especially helpful for learning about processes.
Processes, like how things work.
Exactly, exactly. Like if you're trying to understand, how a machine works or how a biological system functions,
Okay, that makes sense.
an abstract visual can actually be more effective than a really detailed, realistic one.
Huh. So it's not always bad to simplify things?
No, not always. But of course, there are times when realism is important.
Yeah, like in medical imaging, you need to see the details.
Exactly, exactly. So is realism always a bad thing?
It depends.
It
Yeah.
does, yeah.
Huh?
And Brucker and colleagues, they found that the effectiveness of abstract versus realistic visuals can actually depend on your spatial abilities.
Oh, interesting. So it's like if you're already good at visualizing things in your head, you can handle more realism.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you have high spatial skills, you might actually do better with realistic visuals.
Okay.
But if you have lower spatial skills, the abstract ones might be better.
Huh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so one way to kind of cater to everyone is to combine the two.
Oh, okay. So like use both abstract and realistic visuals together.
Exactly. And there are a couple of ways to do this. One is to present them simultaneously,
Okay.
like side by side.
Hmm.
Moreno and colleagues have looked at that. And then there's this other technique called concreteness fading.
Concreteness fading.
Yeah, it's this idea that you start with a more realistic visual,
Okay.
and then as learning progresses, you gradually make it more abstract.
Oh, interesting. So you're kind of weaning them off the realism.
Exactly, exactly. And Goldstone and Sun and Scheider and colleagues, they've done some research on this.
Okay, so that's a good way to manage complexity when you can't just get rid of realism altogether. What about those situations where realism is absolutely necessary, like you said, with medical imaging?
Yeah, so in those cases, the solution isn't to make the visuals more abstract.
Right.
It's to use cues or signals.
Cues.
Yeah, like little things that can direct your attention to the important information.
Oh, okay, so like visual hints or guides within the visual itself.
Exactly, exactly. So for example, you might use arrows
Okay.
to point to specific structures,
Mm-hmm.
or you might use different colors to highlight key areas,
Right, right.
or you might even use like a zoom in effect
Oh, okay.
to draw attention to a particular detail.
So you're not changing the content of the visual. You're just making it easier to see what's important.
Exactly, exactly. And de Koning and others, Matone and Mayer, Scheider and Idle, they've all talked about the benefits of cueing.
Okay.
And it can really help learners select and organize the information.
Yeah, because without those cues, you might not even know where to start looking.
Exactly. And there's this really cool approach called eye movement modeling examples.
Eye movement, what?
Modeling examples, or EME.
EME. Okay.
And it was developed by Drotzka and colleagues. And basically what it involves is showing learners like recordings of how an expert or a successful learner looks at the visual.
Oh, wow. So you're basically watching someone else's eyes as they scan the image.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like you learn to see what's important by watching someone who already knows what to look for.
Huh. That's a really clever idea. It's like learning by imitation, but for your eyes.
Exactly, exactly. And while cueing seems to be really effective for static visuals,
Okay.
it can be trickier for dynamic ones like animations.
Yeah, because things are constantly changing.
Exactly. Van Gogh and others have done some research on that.
Okay, so what do you do if you have a dynamic visual, like an animation, that's really complex?
Yeah, so sometimes you can actually eliminate the dynamism altogether.
Eliminate it.
Yeah.
So just make it static.
Yeah, if it's not absolutely necessary, like if you can still get the point across with a series of still images.
Right, right.
Or by adding like motion indicating arrows to a single static image.
Oh, interesting. So you're basically breaking down the movement into steps.
Exactly, exactly. And there's research by Bouchex and Schneider, Brucker and others, Katrenbone and C, Imhoff and others, Lowe and others. They've all actually shown that static visuals can sometimes be just as good or even better than dynamic ones.
Oh, wow. That's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? You'd think seeing something in motion would be more helpful.
You would, right. But the thing is, dynamic visuals can be really demanding on your attention.
Yeah, you have to constantly keep track of what's changing.
Exactly. And so sometimes breaking it down into static frames can actually make it easier to process.
Right, you can focus on each step individually.
Exactly, exactly. But of course, there are times when you really do need to show the movement.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you're showing how blood flows through the heart or something.
Exactly, exactly. So in those cases, cueing can still be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But as we said, it can be harder to do it effectively with dynamic visuals.
Right.
But Bouchex and Lowe's, they've done some work on what they call spreading color cues.
Spreading color cues.
Yeah, and it's basically this idea that instead of just highlighting individual elements in the animation, you use color that like spreads or changes over time.
Oh, interesting. So the color itself is dynamic.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
used to show like the sequence of events.
Okay, so it's like a visual guide for the flow of the animation.
Exactly, exactly. And this can be really helpful for understanding cause and effect relationships.
Well, that makes sense
Oh,
because the color showing you how things are changing over time.
exactly. And it helps to deal with that transience problem.
Right, the fact that things are constantly changing in the animation.
Exactly. So you're kind of emphasizing the how of the change, not just the what is changing.
I see. So you're providing more guidance for the learner's attention.
Exactly, exactly. Now, what about interactivity?
Interactivity.
Yeah, like giving the learner control over the animation.
Oh, right. So they can
Activity.
pause it, rewind it, replay it.
Exactly. You would think that would be helpful, right?
Yeah, it seems like it would give them more control over their learning.
Yeah, you would think so. But the research is actually kind of mixed on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there have been studies by Kriz and Hegarty, Bucheks and Schneider, Tabers and DeCourger.
Okay.
And they found that learner control, it doesn't always lead to better learning.
Oh, interesting. So just giving learners control doesn't guarantee that they'll use it effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lewstow in 2008, he looked at log file data, like how learners were actually using these interactive features.
Okay.
And he found that sometimes they were using them to explore like superficial aspects of the animation.
Oh, so they were getting distracted by the bells and whistles.
Yeah, basically, instead of focusing on the actual content.
Interesting. So it's not just about having the controls, it's about knowing how to use them effectively.
Exactly. So